We are very pleased tonight to present a form for the 10th Congressional District seat, which will be on the ballot in a very short 11 days. I want to introduce our moderator, Dr. Stephen Farnsworth, right here, who will be introducing the candidates to you, and he will explain the rules of this forum. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Farnsworth. He is a professor of political science at Mary Washington University, which, by the way, is my alma mater, only it was called the Women's College of the University of Virginia at that time, and nonetheless, it's still a fine institution, but I will tell you back then, there were no boys on campus. We had to wear skirts to class, and except if you had an early morning class, there were those seen wearing trench coats with rolled up pajama legs underneath. So, you know, fond memories there, and it really has changed a whole lot in those years. At the University of Mary Washington, he's director of its Center for Leadership and Media Studies, and from 2008 to 2011, he was professor of communications at George Mason. Dr. Farnsworth is the author of 4 books on media and politics, and here's one title that really struck me. He wrote in 2009, Spinner in Chief. He worked for 10 years as a daily newspaper journalist for the Kansas City Star and Times, and has lectured on news media and elections and led reporter training in seminars in such places as India, the Philippines, the Ukraine, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Lithuania, Armenia, and Estonia. So he's been quite a traveler too, I would say. He received his PhD and MA in government from Georgetown University, after receiving a BA in history from the University of Missouri and a BA in government from Dartmouth College. So we welcome Dr. Farnsworth here and look forward to him keeping this not only lively but organized tonight. And I hope you all cooperate out there in keeping this our usual very civil forum. So Dr. Farnsworth.
Thank you, and you're so right that Mary Washington has changed. The students today don't roll up their pajama legs, so. I want to thank you. We have, of course, our candidates here for the 10th Congressional District, and just let me give you a quick introduction to our 2 candidates, and then we can talk a little bit about the rules for the candidates. Kristin Cabral, who has won our coin toss and will give the first opening statement, practices law and lives in McLean, Virginia. She's worked as an attorney for the U.S. Department of Justice, as legal counsel to then Senator Joe Biden, and has taught at George Washington University Law School. She currently serves as a trustee on the Fairfax County Public Library Board and is an officer of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee. She's taught Sunday school at her church, been a Girl Scout troop leader, and helped out with children's sports teams. Her college degree is from the University of Michigan, and her law degree from the Harvard Law School, which she attended alongside Barack Obama. She and her husband Joe have been Northern Virginia residents for over 17 years and have 2 children. Frank Wolf has represented Virginia's 10th district since 1981. Congressman Wolf sits on the House Appropriations Committee, where he is chairman of the Commerce, Justice, Science Subcommittee. He also serves on Transportation and Housing and Urban Development, State and Foreign Operations Committees. In addition, he's co-chair of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, a bipartisan organization made up of 200 members of Congress who work together to raise awareness about international human rights issues. From 1995 to 2000, Congresswoman Wolf was chairman of the Transportation Appropriations Subcommittee and led the effort in Congress to establish the Journey Through Hallowed Ground National Heritage Area. He founded the Northern Virginia Regional Gangs Task Force, a group made up of law enforcement officials from federal, state, and local levels. Congressman Wolf received his BA degree from Penn State University and his law degree from Georgetown University. Prior to his election to Congress, he was employed as a congressional staffer at the U.S. Department of Interior and as an attorney. He lives in Vienna with his wife, Carolyn, and they are parents of 5 grown children. The way that our presentation will work is we will have opening statements of up to 3 minutes from each of the candidates, and then each, in turn, will be asked a question to answer first. There will be 2 minutes for each person to answer the question, and then there will be the option of a 1-minute rebuttal for each of the candidates after the original answers have been provided. And we will have a final closing statement from each of the candidates of up to 5 minutes. And our timekeeper will keep track of where we are. The candidates have seen the signs, so that we'll try to keep this rather even-handed in terms of our positions here. The one thing that I would ask of all of you, in addition to making absolutely sure your cell phones are turned off, is that we will provide a bit of applause to the candidates now to welcome them here, but to hold your applause after that until the end. So thanks so much to the Committee of 100 for organizing this event, and thanks to the candidates for appearing today. This is a great public service, and everyone involved in putting this together should really be commended. It's not easy to organize these things. It's not easy to find time in busy schedules, and we're all the richer for them being here tonight. So thank you to you both. I've been given a collection of index cards with questions that have been provided by the Committee of 100, and so the questions have been provided before we knew which candidate would speak in which order, so we are entirely random in terms of which person gets to answer which question first. So we'll have the campaign candidates will speak from the podiums in front of them, and we will have, again, Ms. Cabral speaking first for an opening statement of up to 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you to the Prince William Committee of 100 for hosting this debate. It is an honor to present my candidacy to the public. My name is Kristin Cabral. I am proudly the Democrat running for the United States House of Representatives in Virginia's 10th Congressional District. I am running to bring fresh leadership to a broken Congress, a Congress that is mired down in stalemate and gridlock. I seek to preserve and grow the American dream, and that means opportunity, especially educational and job opportunities from which I have benefited. I stand before you as a wife, mother, worker, and community volunteer. I am married to Joe Beaulieu, and we have 2 wonderful teenagers, Jacqueline and Paul, who are 15 and 14. We live in Fairfax County. I was the first woman in my family to go to college. My grandpas were 9th grade dropouts. One became a truck driver, the other became a factory foreman. My mother and grandmas were high school diploma secretaries in offices and schools. From these working class roots, I had to put myself through college and Harvard Law School with government loans, Pell Grants, part-time jobs like at McDonald's, and a little scholarship money. I was able to go on to serve the public as a federal prosecutor as well as teach law. As your Congresswoman, I will put the good people of the 10th Congressional District and America first. This means investing in our people, especially our children, because they are the future. We need to, 1, ensure access to those educational tools that students need. And 2, when our young adults graduate, they need jobs, as do some of their parents. I will look to grow small businesses, especially created by women. The very first bill that I will introduce is to grow the Office of Women's Business Ownership in the Small Business Administration. So women, and especially moms, can create jobs for themselves and others. It is this kind of proactive Congresswoman you deserve, improving your lives optimistically and not pessimistically on the back end. Let your Congress make the structures of your lives easier by investing your hard-earned federal tax dollars in transportation solutions that give you more waking hours with your family and investing in schools and not prisons. because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And with Mr. Wolf placing us on the fiscal cliff by voting for sequestration and the Ryan budget, which hurts middle-class families, it's time for fresh leadership. It's time for a change. It's time. I look forward to our debate.
Congressman Wolf, 3 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be here, and I want to thank the committee for hosting this. I have always believed that one person working together in a bipartisan way can make a tremendous difference, not by dividing, criticizing, condemning, but by bringing people together. I've lived in this area, my wife and I, for well over 40 years. My 5 children have gone to public schools here. My home is here. I live and shop and work here and drive on the same roads that everyone else does. We have accomplished a lot by working together, and I will continue to be a fighter for problem solving for our community, whether it's to helping to create jobs, helping to address the nation's debt and deficit, helping to prevent terrorism and cyber attacks, helping to address the region's transportation problems, helping students with regard to formulation of math and science and physics, helping to end gang violence, helping to address Lyme disease, which has heavily impacted this area. Working in a bipartisan manner is how I have always approached my job. When the unemployment rate hit 8%, I put in a bill to bring jobs back. A large portion of that has been signed into law a year ago in November. When the debt and the deficit became a great problem, I, working with the Democratic congressman, we put in a bill to create the SAFE Commission, which led to, along with Jim Cooper, but also Conrad and Greg, to the Simpson-Bowles Commission. I was one of 38 on the House floor. I've spoken for Simpson-Bowles, and I have voted for Simpson-Bowles. I have never signed a political pledge to any special interest group. The only pledge I take is to my wife and to my constituents and to the Constitution. When traffic on I-66 was ground to a halt, we worked to widen I-66 and also to work for the funding for the interchange at Route 29 in Gainesville. When violent gangs were all over this area, I pulled together the FBI, DEA, ATF, Marshal Service, state and local law enforcement, and we now have the best gang task force in the country. Public records matter. I have always asked for voter support based on my record, based on what I have done, but equally important, how I have done it. You have never seen me attacking, condemning, criticizing, ripping people apart, but always working together to solve problems, and that will be what I will do in the future. And again, thanks for hosting the debate.
First question goes to you, Congressman Wolf. What approach would you take to address the federal deficit? What programs would you choose to reduce or eliminate to address the federal deficit challenges?
I have...
I'm sorry, 2 minutes.
Excuse me. Thank you. I have supported the Simpson-Bowles Commission. I think one of the greatest failures of the Obama administration will be when the president appointed Simpson-Bowles, and then when they made their recommendations, he walked away from it. We have $16 trillion of debt. Will be $17 trillion by the end of this year. With the current policies, it will be $22 trillion by the end of 4 more years. We borrow 40 cents of every dollar that we spend. Simpson-Bowles lowers the tax rates, broadens the base, closes a series of tax loopholes, and reforms the entitlements. I think that is the way to go. It is the way that the Gang of 6, now the Gang of 8 over in the Senate, and a group of us, and I was commended by the Concord Coalition, who got the Paul Tsongas Award a couple months ago for being one of the 38 that was willing to come forward. You cannot solve the debt and the deficit by just waste, fraud, and abuse. You got to really go in to deal with the issues. But the way that I've approached it has been basically the Simpson-Bowles Commission. And I do believe, and you may have seen the article in the Wall Street Journal the other day, most of the major corporations have now come out. In fact, the head of Aetna said he got involved because Senator Mark Warner asked him to get involved. Senator Warner, who I worked with on a number of issues, is a strong supporter of Simpson-Bowles over on the Senate side. But I believe the final bill that we deal with this will come out. Lower tax rates, close loopholes, we can get into the number as we go on tonight, reform the entitlements. But whatever you do, you got to do it in a bipartisan way. That is the only way to fundamentally solve the problem.
Ms. Cabral, 2 minutes.
It is important to attack the problem of deficit, debt in our budget. We have to do so by taking a balanced approach, and that means using a scalpel and not a hatchet, as was done with sequestration, which Mr. Wolf voted for, which will very much hurt Virginia families. 200,000 jobs lost, almost about 160 of them here up in Northern Virginia. But what it is, by using a scalpel and using it carefully, we'll be able to reduce spending and raise revenue in these ways. We do have to ferret out waste, fraud, and abuse. Actually, Senator Jim Webb did a good job with the Truman Commission in finding waste of $60 billion in war contracts of our 9/11 wars of Iraq and Afghanistan. We also need to cut unnecessary subsidies, such as to oil companies making record profits on your taxpayer dime, close unnecessary loopholes, such as for corporate jets, streamline government, and control healthcare costs, because that is a real burden on our debt. Raise revenue, fair tax code, sunset the Bush tax cuts on the wealthiest. That means they just go back to the normal rates during the boom times of the Clinton years. This country's about shared sacrifice. We're going to get a peace dividend because we ended the war in Iraq, and we're about to finally stop the end the war in Afghanistan. Increase exports. We're going to fight for American exports, as the Obama administration has done at the World Trade Organization. Stop tax dodgers from going offshore. If you're an American or American corporation earning your income, your profits on American soil, then you have to pay your fair share of taxes like everyone else.
A minute rebuttal, if you like, Congressman.
Well, I would just say the Simpson-Bowles Commission eliminates the sequestration. Secondly, the sequestration's idea, if you read Woodward's book, was from the White House. Jack Lew and Rob Neighbors, I assume in consultation with the president, came up with this idea. Thirdly, sequestration at that time stopped the government from defaulting. That bill that they call sequestration, which came out of the White House, stopped the government from fundamentally defaulting. I believe, and we'll have to check the record, but I believe Senator Warner voted for it. Congressman Hoyer voted for it. Chris Van Hollen. I mean, it was literally, we were facing with a situation, did you want the government to shut down, and did you want to default? But the idea of sequestration came from the White House. And lastly, the Simpson-Bowles vote that I cast, eliminate sequestration. Eliminate sequestration not just for next year, but for the next 10 years.
The record shows that Mr. Wolf voted for sequestration. Again, 2 million families in America will lose their jobs, 200,000 here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, about 160 here in Northern Virginia. And he still voted for sequestration despite voting to raise the debt ceiling a number of times in the past, like during the Bush administration and passing the big bank bailout. So he is holding the 10th Congressional District to partisan gains by so voting for sequestration.
The next question goes first to Ms. Cabral for 2 minutes. What action would you take regarding the Affordable Care Act? Would you support it? Would you favor the repeal of it? Would you advocate for any particular changes?
I very much support the Affordable Care Act. It was very good for the country because it was very good for the marketplace. The market for comprehensive delivery of healthcare goods and services was broken because too many consumers were left out. Obamacare tore down barriers to the market. So for instance, no more gender discrimination against women who, let's say, had cesarean sections or treatments for breast cancer, and then they go to buy new insurance policies, they were kept out of the market. No more pre-existing conditions, no more co-pays for preventative care. Children can stay on their parents' policy to up to age 26. Healthcare companies now have to spend 90% on actual care, or you as a consumer get a refund. So, you know, if the market wasn't broken, so broken, the government wouldn't have had to intervene. Market was broken, government intervened, and we're much better for it.
I opposed Obamacare and have voted against it on a large number of times. I believe it it's done a lot of problems. What it's going to do to Medicare will devastate it. It's taken $700 billion out of Medicare. I believe, secondly, it ought to be between the doctor and the patient. Third, I favor what they call repeal and replace in a simultaneous way. What you will do is, as you repeal the onerous provisions of Obamacare, you will replace it. There will be no pre-existing conditions. Children up to 26 will be able to stay on their parents' health insurance program. You'll be able to pool together. Small businesses, for instance, in Manassas could all pool together. You'll be able to shop across state lines. Right now, you can buy your car insurance across the state line. You can't buy your health insurance across the state line. There'll also be a tort reform and a number of other issues. But I think that's the way to go, because when you look at it and see what the ramifications of what Obamacare will cost us in the next year or two, it'll literally break the back of the company. Many companies are not adding jobs now because of that. They're waiting to see what takes place, but they will not add any in, and many will begin to drop them and force people into the exchange.
Well, it's interesting that Mr. Wolf says that he voted against Obamacare because it hurt Medicare, and yet he voted for the Ryan budget, which wants to privatize Medicare and turn it into a voucher system. That will really hurt Medicare, too. His solution is to repeal and replace. Why not just amend it? Why throw the baby out with the bathwater? It's my understanding from our last debate, there's a lot of things about Obamacare he likes. So why, throw it away? Just amend it. And as with all his seniority, he could certainly file bills to do that. Actually three, Mr. Wolf voted 30 times already to repeal Obamacare. And again, yet he says there's a lot of things he does support about it, such as the no pre-existing conditions, children on the health policy till 26. Just a typical politician saying he agrees with the popular parts, but won't brave tough votes on the other stuff that is more complex.
1 minute rebuttal.
Yeah, I think probably maybe the greatest mistake after failure to address the debt and the deficit that this administration will have is the failure to work in a bipartisan way on the health care issue. There were no Republican votes for Obamacare. That's not the way to do something that has a long-lasting sustaining. If you recall, there was the comment that if you wanted to see what was in it, you could then vote for it and pass it, and that would be the way. The president wasted that opportunity. He said he would reach out, and I think that would have been the opportunity to reach out in a bipartisan way, not do it behind closed doors. If you recall, during the conference, during the beginning, they said all these meetings will be open. In fact, there was even a comment that they would all be televised. Not only were they not televised, they were not open, and no Republicans supported it, and many Democrats opposed it. So I think when you're doing something that big and significant, it should be done in a bipartisan manner.
The next question goes to you, Congressman Wolf. What would be the best strategy to prevent the development of nuclear weapons by Iran?
Well, I think the failure of the administration, I think, at the outset, 3.5 years ago, when the riots were taking place in Iran, to advocate and speak out on behalf of the Iranian community that wanted freedom and human rights. It wasn't until that young girl was killed in the Green Revolution that the White House even said anything. I think the best approach would have been to take the same approach that President Reagan and Scoop Jackson, Republican and Democrats, took during the 80s and 70s with regard to the defeat of the Soviet Union, to advocate for those people who wanted freedom. There seems to be a consensus now that tight sanctions, but it really took the administration a long while to sort of get on the sanctions bandwagon. But I think we have to support democracy and using the internet and using the web and using many other things to advocate the same way that we did behind the Soviet Union for freedom and democracy. That way it puts great pressure on the Iranian government. But I think, again, one of the failures when the administration refused to advocate, it's like we're now facing now, saying very little. The Coptic Christians are being persecuted in Egypt, and very little said. We find 30,000 people that have now been killed in in Syria, and the comments are very, very little. But I think that was the missed opportunity. I think sanctions are important. The sanctions should be even stronger than they currently are. Any country dealing with it, we should reach out and tell them to stop. But sanctions, but I missed the opportunity to bring about the Green Revolution where there could have been freedom and democracy in Iran.
2 minutes.
I believe we should strive for peace through diplomacy and be ready to enforce the peace. I oppose a nuclear Iran. We want to continue the unified pressure on Iran that the Obama administration has helped lead to keep Iran from getting nuclear weapons. Sanctions have worked, and they continue to work. Sanctions that limit materials that could be used for nuclear capabilities, and these sanctions cause discontent amongst the Iranian people who suffer, and they get angry at their government. As a last resort, with allies, perhaps carry out limited military action, but it depends upon the situation. But President Clinton and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have done well. The sanctions are working. Hopefully, we'll all come to the table and settle this through peace and not war.
Rebuttal, 1 minute? Oh, okay. The next question goes to Ms. Cabral first. What strategy would you support in Congress in order for Congress to actually pass a budget?
Well, for one thing, we need to break this stalemate, get the country moving again, get America moving forward. We need to talk to each other. We need to work cooperatively and across the aisle and seek compromise, and I would do just that as your Congresswoman. We have to stop thinking only in black and white terms. Stop taking sides, throwing sand in the sandbox. We have more in common than differences, and we need to seek out our commonalities. I look forward as your Congresswoman working with my partners in the Senate, Senator Warner and Senator Tim Kaine. We'll certainly seek to do what's best for Virginia and the nation. It's important that united we stand, divided we fall. So I would very much look to reach across the aisles, make sure that both Democrats and Republicans come on board to solve this gridlock on Capitol Hill.
2 minutes.
The House has passed budget for the last 3 years. The Senate has not passed a budget for the last 3 years. They have just refused. They have literally refused to pass a budget. Also, I have a good working relationship with my counterpart. I'm the chairman of the committee that funds the sciences and the Justice Department, the FBI. Barbara Mikulska and I have been friends for years. We could resolve our appropriation bill, but they haven't even passed their appropriation bills. So not only has the Senate not passed a budget, they have not passed their appropriation bills. And so the House has passed their appropriation bills. The House has passed the budget, but you can't force the Senate, governed by Majority Leader Reid, you just can't force them to come together. I have a history of working in a bipartisan way. That's not just a phrase. That's just a reality. My best friend in Congress is a former Democratic member, Congressman Tony Hall. He contributes to my campaign. He was a strong supporter of Barack Obama. Before we had the last debate on Tuesday, he called me up and said, I understand your debates tonight. I wish you well. We're good friends. We didn't agree on everything, but we're good friends. We were able to solve and do things together. But the House has passed it over the last 3 years. The Senate has not, nor have they passed the appropriation bills this year.
1 minute rebuttal, if you like. Okay. Next question goes first to Mr. Wolf. With respect to tax rates and tax deductions, what changes in tax rates do you support? What deductions and credits would you eliminate in order to maintain adequate revenue?
Well, Simpson Bowles literally does a series of things. It lowers the tax rates. It closes a series of loopholes for NASCAR track owners. dog track owners, horse track owners, mohair producers, ethanol producers, video game manufacturers, tackle box manufacturers. All these groups have powerful lobbyist interests in town, and they get them put in. In 2010, GE paid no taxes. GE filed 57,000 pages of tax reform, and they pay no taxes. So basically what they do is they lower the rates, they broaden the base, they close a lot of the tax loopholes, and then they also deal with the entitlements. I think the Simpson Bowls is a blueprint. It is a model. And again, it isn't something that I just talk about. It's something that I've spoken out on the floor on. It's something that I voted on. As I said to USA Today, and the Concord Coalition gave me an award about a month ago for being for it. There were only 38 of us in the House. There were roughly 20 Democrats and 17 or 18 Republicans, the exact number. But I believe that is the way to go about it, because it is a blueprint, a way that deals with everything, and it deals in an interrelated way. But I believe that's the way that ultimately, and that's the way if you look at the Wall Street Journal today or yesterday, many of the CEOs are now coming out. There will soon be ads on television now embracing, whereby they're saying we do not want to go over the fiscal cliff. What we want is to pass something modeled after the Simpson Bowles Commission.
2 minutes.
Again, it's important we balance the budget. We get down that national debt. One way to do so is to lower the corporate rate to encourage investment and thus job creation. I will note that the Dow Jones is up 68% since President Obama took office. That is the best performance of any president, the fifth best performance since any president starting in 1900. That gives confidence in the markets. Confidence in the markets makes confident investors, which means more jobs. But again, Mr. Wolf voted for sequestration, which harms this region in particular by eliminating jobs, and that Ryan budget, which hurts the middle class and seniors. Also, I would cap deductions at $17,000, which would bring $1.7 trillion back into the Treasury. Limit home mortgage deduction to just your primary home, not second homes or more or investment properties. Raise the capital gain rate from 15% to 25%. Again, bring more money into the Treasury. Reform retirement deductions and inheritance rules, which now are only helping the super rich, who are getting 70% of those benefits. Again, reform the tax code overall, let those Bush tax cuts on the wealthiest sunset, because we need, again, to balance this budget, we need to make the smart investments in our people when it comes to education, jobs.
Rebuttal.
We have $16 trillion of debt. It'll be $17 trillion by the end of the year. If the policies of this administration continue, in the next 4 years, it'll be $22 trillion. You on the Simpson Bowles Commission, you had Dick Durbin, who's one of the more liberal members of the Senate, and you have Tom Coburn, who's probably the most conservative member of the Senate, come together. Simpson was a Republican senator from Wyoming, a conservative. Erskine Bowles was chief of staff of Bill Clinton. Almost everyone that's looked at it believes that is the way to go. And so I think, it's not only what I've spoken for, no, what I've advocated for, but that's what I voted for, and that's what I think will ultimately be what will pass the House and the Senate and sign into law.
1 minute, rebuttal.
Mm-hmm. Let me note that we are on the right track. We are coming out of this recession. There's been more and more good news that our economy is bouncing back. 5 million private sector jobs has been created in the past 30 months. However, Mr. Wolf voted for that Ryan budget, which would eliminate over $400 million in domestic investments, such as in infrastructure, which is very much needed, particularly in this area for transportation solutions. And by the way, as your congresswoman, I would make sure to bring back your hard-earned federal tax dollars into this district to work for you on transportation solutions. So again, when it comes to making sure that we invest in America, vote Democrat.
The next question goes first to you, Ms. Cabral. 2 minutes on the question, what is your position on drilling for oil offshore off the coast of Virginia?
Well, first of all, we need to control our own energy because too much reliance on Middle Eastern oil is a national security problem. Okay, we need to be able to control our own energy. However, that said, when it comes to offshore drilling, no, I don't support it because I think it would be short-sighted. Remember that BP oil spill down in the Gulf? Well, if that were to occur off the shore here of Virginia, it's going to hurt our Navy, it's going to hurt tourism, okay? We don't need oil slapping up on the beaches of Virginia Beach and hurt the tourism industry. For the here and now, I support an all-of-above approach, but we no longer should be investing in old, dirty energies. We must support green energy investments, go with renewable energies, such as solar, wind, and hydro. That means building wind farms on land and even the ocean, but making sure those windmills don't interfere with our naval operations or commercial shipping lanes or low-flying aircraft. Make sure we have green technologies. I drive a hybrid, proudly, made in America, a Ford. And we need cars like my car that gives you more miles per gallon and less polluting as well. Natural gas, a great resource, but we need to do so safely. Make sure that we don't use harmful chemicals to break up the shale. And when it comes to coal, we need to make that cleaner with better filters when burning. But really, we need to shift to those cleaner energy sources. Offshore drilling is not the way to go.
I drive a hybrid too, just so you know. But that's not going. I favor all of the above. I favor drilling off the outer continental shelf. I believe, and I think you ought to check and see if I'm right. If I believe, I think Senator Warner also favors it. I think Senator Webb also favors it. I think most of the delegation also favors it. I think the governor favors it. It can be in an environmentally sound way. We ought not be reliant on foreign energy. I think we can be energy independent in 10 to 15 to perhaps 20 years. This is an important part of it, though, and you can do it in an environmentally sound way. And also you can take those resources that the state of Virginia could use for transportation and many other. But I favor wind, solar, gas, all of the above, but I do favor drilling off the outer continental shelf in a very safe environmental way, as does the governor, and I believe, as does Senator Warner and Senator Webb and most of the Virginia delegation.
Rebuttal? Next question goes first to Congressman Wolf. What is the most pressing issue, in your opinion, facing the residents of Prince William County, Manassas, and Manassas Park? And once you say what that question is, the most pressing issue, what would you do to address it in Congress?
Well, I think there are two pressing issues that go together. One is the national issue, and that is the debt and the deficit and dealing with it. Again, the deficit and the debt is just eating us alive. You just got to deal with it, and you cannot kick the can down the road, and I am prepared and I'm committed to it. I'm 73 years old. I'm closer to the end of my life than I am to the beginning. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we solve that problem. So nationally, I think everywhere you are, and part of that is to create jobs, to protect jobs, to make sure. Locally, I think maybe one of the largest, the greatest issues, and there are a number, is really transportation. I have voted to widen I-66. We got the resources to widen I-66. We're widening inside the Beltway. We also working, we've gotten the money for the Route 29 interchange. We're bringing rail to Dulles. So I have funded the study, the rapid bus transit, which will allow rapid bus transit to use shoulder lanes to come on, go all the way out through Prince William County, all the way out into Fauquier County and connecting in. So I think nationally, and there are many issues. There's so many, and we want to resolve the war in Afghanistan. It's been going on for 12 years. That's an important issue, and I want to thank the men and women who are serving and their families. So how do you kind of rate these things? I think the economy, though, as Admiral Mullen said, probably the greatest threat to our nation is the failure to address the debt and the deficit. And probably one of the major issues, and there are others, because I hate to just say one, is really resolving and solving the transportation problem in this region.
2 minutes, Ms. Presentation.
Well, the greatest issue facing the residents of Prince William County, Manassas Park, is sequestration. And placing us on that fiscal cliff is very much Mr. Wolf, who voted for it. Again, 2 million jobs lost nationally, 200,000 here in Virginia. Here in Northern Virginia, 65,000 federal workers, 96,000 contractors. And may I remind you, you may have seen this news a couple of weeks ago, 1 in every 5 American households now have student debt. Our household very much experienced that when we left school 20 years ago. So these jobs are very much needed to make the mortgage, make that second mortgage of the student debt. And by the way, when these wonderful federal workers and contractors of ours lose their jobs, it will have a ripple effect. It will hurt local businesses like restaurants, shops, dry cleaners, gas stations. And it may make mortgage payments very hard to make, and it will increase the foreclosure rate. Again, I'd also say that transportation is very big. That gridlock on Capitol Hill, of which he's very much a part of, has caused gridlock on your roads. There is, by the way, no rail to Dulles. There's just rail to Wheelie Avenue, okay? And as your congresswoman, I would deliver on your hard-earned federal tax dollars to deliver back into this district on transportation solutions, like finally getting that rail to Dulles, which would also stop the tolls from rising on the Dulles toll road and greenway, and you'll stop being nickeled and dimed that way. But let me also remind you that Mr. Wolf voted against the stimulus, which brought tax dollars, to this transportation dollars to this region. Again. You need someone in there who will deliver for you on transportation, and I will very much do that.
1 minute rebuttal.
There's so much to say, but I'll just try to sum it up. Sequestration would have been eliminated by passage of Simpson-Bowles. Secondly, the author of sequestration is the President of the United States and the White House. If you read Woodward's book, it's very clear. And I just looked here. Some of the people that voted for sequestration: Connolly, Pelosi, Hoyer, Clyburn, Van Hollen, Wasserman Schultz, and the beat goes on. The sequestration idea came out of the White House, and the greatest failure, again, you mark my word, when they write the history of this administration, President Obama, to his credit, appointed Simpson-Bowles. And then when they came out with a recommendation, he said, "I know you not," and he walked away from it. And that really was the greatest failure. But the adoption of sequestration then can be eliminated totally, and not just a fix for 1 year, but Simpson-Bowles resolves the sequestration, period. But that's the way to do it.
1 minute rebuttal.
Mm-hmm. At least 3 things. One, sequestration was still wrong because it will hurt this area, particularly the 10th Congressional District, very, very hard. If I was your congresswoman, would not have voted for it. 2, Simpson-Bowles in no way was a bipartisan effort. He proudly says he was one of only 38 to vote for it. Let's see, that means about, what, 400 other Congress people voted against it, didn't support it. That's not a bipartisan solution. Also, when it comes to federal funding being brought back into this district, when you put the whole rail to Dulles together, going out there to Loudoun County, he has only delivered 14% total in federal funding, where such major transportation projects around the country usually get 40% federal funding input. So he has failed to deliver.
The next question for Ms. Cabral. First, what action would you take with respect to access to assault weapons and automatic weapons by private citizens?
I believe in the Constitution. I believe in the Second Amendment. But no right is absolute, correct? Even our precious freedom of speech under the First Amendment is limited. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. We have libel and defamation laws. Same for the Second Amendment. It too can be limited. As a former federal prosecutor who was proudly endorsed by the Police Benevolent Association, and who believes there should never be another police widow or orphan, I believe in bringing back the assault weapons ban it's essential to public safety. These weapons were made to kill humans. I believe that we should bring that ban back.
2 minutes.
My father was a policeman in the city of Philadelphia. I support the Second Amendment. I also support the Brady Bill. The Brady Bill had a 3-day waiting period. The Brady Bill had a background check. I also, as chairman of the committee that funds the Justice Department, have increased dramatically what they call NICS, the National Background Check. We actually funded it higher than the Obama administration in a bipartisan way. Let me just read you a letter. Statement of Mayors Against Illegal Guns, co-chairman New York City Mayor Bloomberg. He said, Chairman Wolf and Ranking Member Fattah showed us, Chairman Wolf and Ranking Member Fattah showed us that Washington can actually work by forging bipartisan solutions to prevent guns from being sold to dangerous people who are already prohibited by federal law. We want to say it plainly, their commitment, Mr. Wolf and Mr. Fattah, to helping states fill the gaps in gun background checks will save lives. And the failure of the states to resolve this issue and to be involved with regard to the mental background check and sending in, that's what we funded at a record level higher than what the administration even asked for. And we got the commendation of Mayor Bloomberg and the other mayors.
Rebuttal?
He says he supported a Brady Bill because there was a 3-day waiting period, but he actually voted, it's in his voting record, to reduce a 3-way waiting period for background checks down to 1 day, which is quite curious given that he has always been very concerned about the problem of gangs. When it comes to Justice Department funding, Mr. Wolf has voted against such funding, and I believe, again, we need to bring back the assault weapons ban, because when it comes to the gun market, it's interstate and even international. So simply just to pawn it off on the states and come up with a crazy quilt of different state laws to deal with this very serious problem of public safety really is not your best solution.
1 minute rebuttal?
Well, I'll just read it again. I didn't read the whole thing, but it said, today in one appropriation bill, this is from Statement of Mayors Against Illegal Guns, co-chairman New York City, Mayor Michael Bloomberg, quote, today in one appropriation bill, we saw some of the best and worst of Washington at work. Chairman Wolf and Ranking Member Fattah showed us that Washington can actually work by forging bipartisan solutions to prevent guns from being sold to dangerous people who are already prohibited by federal law. We want to say it plainly. Their commitment to helping states fill the gaps in the gun background check system will save American lives.
This question goes to you, Congressman Wolf. 2 minutes on the issue. What would you offer with respect to any policies relating to immigration and immigration reform?
To immigration?
Immigration.
I believe that another failure, perhaps the third failure of the Obama administration will be failure to address the immigration issue. First, before you do anything, you have to protect the borders. The borders are very, very porous. In certain areas, they're just pouring across. I was down in El Salvador with Congressman Tom Davis, and we went to a gang center where people who were members of MS-13 were getting their tattoos taken off, and they went around the room, and they all knew who Tom Davis was and who I was because they had all been here. They had all been here illegally. They said they came here illegally, went back there illegally, and we're going to come back illegally. You need to gain control of the borders. Secondly, in 1986, under the Reagan administration, there was an amendment for amnesty. I opposed amnesty. We have so many people who are, I'm the grandson of an immigrant family. We have so many people who are waiting in line legally coming in the appropriate way. And so by giving amnesty, somebody who's come across the border illegally then hurts somebody from another country who's waiting to come in. But I think there can be a grand bargain, a grand compromise. But first, before you do anything, you got to get control of the borders. And we have failed to get control of the borders.
2 minutes.
Yes, we need comprehensive immigration reform. As a federal prosecutor, I deported illegal aliens because I enforce the immigration laws. First and foremost, we need to secure the borders. Why? It is essential to national security, No more 9/11s. And borders aren't just geography, it's also folks coming in from abroad at our international airports. 2, rid of the backlog of cases. I experienced that myself as a federal prosecutor. Some of these cases take years to get through both the administrative process, administrative courts, and the federal courts. We need more funding for our court system, and he has voted against that. 3, hold accountable employers who game the system by hiring undocumented workers, okay? That's taking the job of an American or even a documented worker. If you are here illegally, pay your taxes, follow the law, get on the path to citizenship. And I do support the DREAM Act, which only gets these minors conditional permanent residency at best. It is not a blanket amnesty. It is not automatic citizenship. They have to jump through a lot of hoops. 1, you have good moral character. 2, you're a high school graduate. 3, you arrived in the United States as a minor. And 4, you've had at least 5 years of continuous physical presence in the United States. And then, only if you get that, and 2 years of college and military service, you'll be just a temporary resident, not a citizen. So these are just some of the many ways that we can solve the immigration problem with comprehensive reform.
Rebuttal?
That's good.
Question goes to Ms. Cabral. How would you change federal policy with respect towards education?
That's a wonderful question because it is so important we invest in our children. We need to support pre-K, and particularly that federal government program Head Start, of which I was one of the first children to go through. I went through it in 1970 and 71. 2, we need to support K through 12, and especially special education. I'm the mother of a child who does receive some special education services, and I've had a lot of mothers come up to me on the trail, practically with tears in my eye and tears in their eyes, seeking for me to help them on this issue. 2, when it comes to higher education, in order to access it, our young adults need low-interest student loans. Again, 1 in every 5 households right now have student debt. Pell Grants, work-study jobs. Seats at community colleges, like here at our Northern Virginia Community College, the largest such college in the nation in the sense of enrollment. Technical training, and also retraining workers seeking new jobs. This means funding. And what I'm also hearing from teachers on the trail is that they are looking for funding for classroom instruction to reach the children and stop just teaching to the test. Mr. Wolf voted to cut education extensively by voting for the Ryan budget. He's for giving tax cuts to the super wealthy on the backs of our children.
2 minutes.
I favor strongly education. I'm the first in my family to go to college. My mom went to 6th grade. My dad, I think, went to seventh grade. I have 5 children. They've all gone to the public schools. 3 of my children are involved in education. One's a teacher, was a teacher in Fairfax County. Another one, she and her husband operate a school up in Princeton, where my good friend comes from. I have another daughter who's in education and works for one of the leading educational research organizations in the country. I have strongly supported education, have supported the Pell Grants, have voted to keep the Pell Grant loans down. Also had funded at a very aggressive level the STEM program, math, science, physics, chemistry, biology. We have also funded the grants that the NASA program to give with regard to education in the sciences. And I was at a Battlefield High School about 3 or 4 months ago, met with the young kids who were doing the robotics and had the National Science Foundation take them out and meet with them. So I have been there on education. Education is very, very important. And particularly I've also introduced, which was part of I was signed into law about a year ago, to forgive loans of those who are majoring in math and science and physics and chemistry who then go on to teach.
Rebuttal? 1 minute.
Thank you. Again, as your Congresswoman, I would deliver on your hard-earned tax dollars back into the district, the 10th Congressional District of Virginia. That means earmarks. I have no problem with earmarks for education. It is so important to provide resources for opportunity. That is the key to the American dream. That is why I'm running for Congress. We need to unlock the potential of our people, because it's about making sure your government creates the conditions for that trinity of human dignity, keeping the roof over your head, food in the children's mouth, and clothes on your back.
1 minute rebuttal.
I'll just comment one other. When we looked at the whole competitive nature of the world today, I came up with the idea of the immersion program. And I brought the immersion program. We had a debate in Great Falls the other day. I told the Japanese immersion program at Great Falls Elementary School came through our efforts. So we have been also worked with regard to not only math and science and physics and chemistry and biology, but also languages. And the immersion program has been a very successful way to teach languages.
The next question, this goes to Congressman Wolf. Would you support reinstatement of the ICE agreement with Prince William County?
Yes, I would, and I have been in touch with Mayor Parrish, who was in the back of the room. He called me about it, but yet I think the 287 has been very important to this area, so I definitely will support reinstating that back in. That has kept a lot of very bad characters off the streets, and that by taking that away from Prince William and other areas, it could very well threaten certain areas. I'll just put it that way. But yes, I strongly favor the reinstitution of that. And I believe that is the position of the elected officials here in Prince William County.
2 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Public safety is first and foremost. If you do the crime, you do the time. That goes for citizens and non-citizens alike. That says, I agree with the Obama administration to phase out the 287G ICE program and move towards the Secure Communities program. Local police can still arrest suspects. Prosecutors can still seek convictions. But it is up to the federal government as to deportation, because only the federal government can deport illegal aliens. The federal government has plenary power in this area. They occupy the field. Even the Supreme Court agrees the federal government has supremacy here.
The police department is very concerned with the loss of that. They are very, very concerned. I'm sure if you can talk to Hal Parrish about it. We had a long conversation. He's been in touch with the chief and other. That is not a good idea for the safety and the security of the community. And there are violent gangs, and there are also. So the police are very concerned with the loss of it too.
Any rebuttal?
Again, we have federal agents and a federal Justice Department dealing with the federal immigration laws. That is properly where that power is placed.
This question goes first to Ms. Cabral. This will be our last question, and then we'll have closing statements after that. What needs to be done to ensure effective regulation and oversight by the FDA to prevent occurrences such as the recent deaths caused by the fungal meningitis?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it's so important that we address this problem because it has resulted in deaths and injuries of innocent people. We have to ensure that these compounding facilities are regulated properly and not cut funding to the FDA, as Mr. Wolf has done. In particular, these facilities, which mix enormous batches of drugs, have become now like big drug manufacturers themselves, and they need better oversight. So as your Congresswoman, I would definitely introduce legislation to give the FDA authority to inspect these, unfortunately at times, dirty facilities, to set standards, and to monitor sales. It's also important, to give the FDA that watchdog function. The FDA needs more teeth on it. It needs more funding, and not just leave it to the states, because states, again, quite often don't have enough personnel, qualified personnel to make those inspections of those facilities or the resources to do that. We don't need a crazy quilt of different state enforcement. I think it's good to give the FDA what it needs. And let me just mention that my one and only sister came 1 hour from death from meningitis as a college student. She was found in a coma. She was in a coma for 5 days. We didn't know if she was going to live or die. And, you know, again, the consumers should not be subject to that kind of injury and death that my sister almost experienced herself at age 19.
2 minutes.
I favor the regulation of that, and obviously at the federal level with the Food and Drug. But if you looked, I think Massachusetts slipped too. If you look at that on the news, I saw that that facility was directly next to a trash dump. But I believe it should be regulated at the level. And I looked down here on the food safety issue. I was one of 10 Republicans that voted for increased modernization of the FDA with regard to regulation of food safety, particularly. You're seeing some of the peanut butter recalls and things like that. But I believe that should have been regulated and should be regulated at the federal level.
So we'll turn now to closing statements. Again, because of the coin toss, Congressman Wolf will go first. The closing statement is up to 5 minutes.
I want to thank you again and the Prince William Committee of 100, and thank all of you personally for taking the time to come out. As I said, I lived in this community, live here. My kids went to school here. My home is here. I drive on the roads. I've never been afraid to take on any issues, whether they're large or small or local or international. Whenever there's a problem, I run to the problem to try to address the problem, to deal with it. I will continue to push for a grand bargain to cut more than $4 trillion of deficit spending modeled after the Simpson-Bowles Commission. I will continue to oppose political pledges to special interest groups, and again, the only pledge again will be to my constituents, my wife, and to the Constitution. I will continue to do everything I can to repatriate, to bring jobs back. I mean, President Obama's jobs guy is Jeff Immelt, who sent more jobs to China, the head of GE, and we should be bringing jobs back from China, not sending them to China. I will continue to work on traffic congestion issues. I will continue to push for the regulation of the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority, and you watch your papers next week. I was the one who asked for the IG investigation because you had a dysfunctional board operating and doing things. And just read the paper and you'll see why I asked for the report. I will continue to push with regard to gangs. When I saw the problem, we pulled everyone together, and now we have a gang task force, FBI, DEA, ATF, Marshal Service, all the law enforcement from Arlington all the way out here, over the mountain, into the Shenandoah Valley, down to Harrisonburg. I've taken the effort with regard to sexual trafficking. We have had, I saw a report by Polaris that there were 82 centers of young people, young women being sexually trafficked in this area. I took the effort. We called Neil McBride, who I think has done a very, very good job, but we now have one of the most aggressive task forces. And in my bill, we have now mandated that there be a sexual traffic and anti-sexual trafficking task force in every U.S. Attorney's office in the nation. I will reintroduce my legislation, the Foreign Lobbying Reform Act, to prohibit high-ranking government officials, including members of Congress, from lobbying on behalf of countries like China and Iran and Sudan. I will continue to work on heritage tourism and work with regard to protecting those things. And as many people will remember, I was the author of the bill that saved the Manassas battlefield for not having that mattress discounters up on the top of the hill and the warehouse. I will continue to work on Lyme disease and lead the efforts with regard to research and development and testing and prevention. I will continue to work with regard to funding of math and science. As I said, in the bill that I reported out that we're waiting for the Senate to act on, we have a record high for the National Science Foundation, so we can compete with China and other nations. I will continue to push for STEM, working with groups like at the young kids at Battlefield High School and the robotics, and pushing with regard to STEM and making sure that we are, again, doing everything we can to foster and push the sciences. Working together, we've had a lot of successes. Again, I would ask for your support. I would ask for your support based on what I have done. I'm one of the few members of Congress to publish my entire voting record so people can go online and see how I voted on every issue. You know what I've done, but equally important to what I have done is how I have done it. I've done it in a bipartisan manner by bringing people together to solve problems. You know me, you know my record, you can always count on me to fight for you as long as I'm in Congress. And again, thanks for coming out and taking the time to have this event. Thank you, good night.
Closing statement, Ms. Cabral. 5 minutes.
Thank you so much to the Prince William Committee of 100 for hosting this forum. I hope you have learned about my candidacy, and if you would like to know more, please visit my website at www.kristincabral.com. Once again, I am running to bring fresh leadership to a broken Congress. When congressmen are taking votes for their party instead of for the people they represent, something is wrong. That is the case here. Mr. Wolf is not a moderate. In recent years, he has voted more than 90% of the time with the extremist Tea Party House of Representatives, and he has voted 90% of the time with his party since he was first sworn into office in 1981. Almost 32 years of this partisanship is much too long. It's time for fresh leadership, time for positive forward-thinking investments that will help us balance the federal budget in the long run, because such investments in education and job opportunities create workers and taxpayers and virtuous citizens. What the good people of the 10th Congressional District finally deserve is a congressperson who has the priorities of the people straight and who takes an activist approach for delivering for us. There is an old saying by Will Rogers when he says, quote, "Even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there," unquote. Well, not only is Mr. Wolf just sitting there, but he has failed to put us on the right track to begin with. For all that seniority, he has failed to deliver transportation solutions. Again, that gridlock on Capitol Hill that he has helped create is causing gridlock on our roads. Where is the same solid federal funding for the rail to Dulles, like other major transportation projects have received around the USA? He comes up short. Again, rather than securing at least a good 40% in federal funding, he's only secured 14%. Why are our federal taxes not coming back into the district to work for us? He has caused a situation that puts more pressure on our state and local governments to come up with more than their fair share for transportation dollars. And that means less money for our schools and our children's future. Also, Mr. Wolf has focused on the rights of others in foreign lands, but I believe that charity begins at home. He voted against food funding for hungry children in his own district. He first voted against the 21st Century GI Bill of Rights that has helped over 800,000 of our brave 9/11 vets with educational and job opportunities. He voted against COPS, acronym standing for Community-Oriented Policing Services, that puts cops on the beat in our communities, getting to know those teenagers before they get into trouble. More concerning is that he has placed us on the fiscal cliff. He voted for the Ryan budget that will hurt middle-class Americans and our seniors. Again, he voted for sequestration, which threatens 200,000 Virginia families and more than half of those here in Northern Virginia, so many of whom work for our trusted federal government and its government contractors. In essence, Mr. Wolf voted to kick the can down the road rather than say, the buck stops here, and use his over 30 years of seniority to forge compromise, a fully bipartisan compromise with his name on it. Actions and non-actions speak louder than words. I will be your new voice for Virginia that will do what is best for Virginia. I will not even consider voting for a budget plan that would negatively impact Virginia like the ones Frank Wolf has supported. I seek balance and fairness. I will fight to ensure that shared sacrifice, which built America, is part of the equation. I will work hard to grow educational opportunities that are key to succeeding in the 21st century. I want to grow small businesses that create good jobs and continue to move the country forward. This country has worked to cut the ability of the government to give people access to, this Congress has worked to cut the ability of the government to give people access to opportunities, and he's helped cut those opportunities. Now, Remember, we must maintain and grow opportunities to reduce the debt, to be shared responsibly. He has put current jobs at risk by supporting the radical Ryan budget and sequestration. When long-term career politicians' policies, ideas, and votes no longer line up with the district anymore, it is time for fresh leadership. It's time for a change. It's time. He has not delivered. He is out of touch. If elected, I will deliver for you. Thank you for inviting me out tonight. It has been an honor.
I'm going to turn the microphone over to the Committee 100 in a moment, but first I want to commend both of the candidates. They demonstrated respect for each other. They were able to be disagreeing on matters without being disagreeable. They didn't interrupt each other. They were very conscientious with respect to the time. There are certain lessons that certain presidential candidates might learn from our panelists here tonight. And so thank you so much for your attention. And thanks to the candidates. It's a sacrifice, I understand, for everyone on a Friday evening to be involved in public affairs, and a much greater sacrifice to be willing to serve and to go through the long hours of running for office. So my compliments again to the candidates here tonight.